In the heart of London, a vision of royal grandeur was being carved from stone, timber, and the sweat of thousands. Every great structure begins with a single measurement, a line drawn in the earth that will one day become a wall.
66 feet, then another 66. Precision was not optional, it was everything.
The site foreman was the nerve center of the operation. His word was law, his eye unyielding.
Before a single stone could be laid, the earth itself had to be mastered, shaped, cleared, and made ready. The plumber's art was ancient and unforgiving, beaten lead, sealed tight, standing between a palace and the rain. A watertight seal was the difference between a palace and a ruin foot. Every inch of lead sheeting had to be dressed with absolute care.
2 feet to the east. No more, no less. When building for a monarch, deviation was simply not permitted.
Every dimension was sacred. The central block, precisely 100 feet, would anchor the entire composition. 100 feet. The measurements had to be exact, for every stone that followed would answer to this one. Level, true, perfect. In the language of the mason, these 3 words meant everything. Course by course, the walls of Buckingham Palace climbed skyward, each layer a testament to discipline and craft. The 3rd course was uneven, a flaw invisible to the untrained eye, but unacceptable to a master mason. The delivery never stopped. Stone, mortar, timber, lead. The appetite of a palace under construction was insatiable. Mortar, the invisible glue of empires, mixed, carried, and laid by hands that history would never name. The mortar had to be perfect. Too wet and the stones would shift. Too dry and the bond would crack under centuries of weight. Before cranes, before machines, only rope, timber, and the raw strength of men moved the stones of kings. Every hoist was a triumph of engineering, ropes, pulleys, and human endurance lifting stone that weighed more than a dozen men. Steady, lower, breathe. One wrong move and a block weighing tons could shift, with catastrophic consequences. She seated. 2 words that meant hours of preparation, precision, and patience had paid off. Fractions of an inch. That was the margin of error. Plumb and true, the mason's 2 commandments, checked and rechecked at every course. Seen from above, the site was a city within a city, organized, relentless, and utterly magnificent. The walls rose not in days, but in months, each course demanding as much care as the last. The ashlar mason worked in silence, speaking only through the language of the chisel and the perfection it produced. Ashlar blocks, each one dressed to a razor edge, would give the palace its smooth, commanding face.
Would reshape the face of London forever, forever. The new wings would stretch far to the east and west.
Even the king himself came to witness the ambition taking shape in stone.
Nash spoke of quadrangles and symmetry.
Each block was a small eternity of labor. And again, the rhythm of construction, ancient, brutal, and unstoppable.
Dowels of oak set in lead, the hidden skeleton that bound the palace stones into a single, unbreakable mass. As the sun set on London, the palace never truly slept. Work continued by iron cramps set in lead fit, invisible to all who would ever walk these halls, yet holding the stones in an iron embrace for centuries. A quieter army of craftsmen shaped the details that would make this palace truly magnificent. The medallion required the finest touch. A single slip of the chisel could destroy hours of painstaking work. Ambitious elements of Nash's design give the palace its commanding classical presence. Each column drum weighed several tons, yet had to settle with the precision of a watchmaker's art. Water, patient and persistent, much a tool of the mason as any chisel or mallet. Timber beams, the hidden bones of the palace, had to be lifted story by story.
The gin pole crane. Simple, powerful, indispensable.
4 men walking in circles could lift what 40 men could not carry. By midday, the site was at its peak, every trade working simultaneously, the air thick. The leadwork was the palace's silent shield, invisible from the street.
Until the keystone dropped, the arch was nothing but a promise.
The keystone, the last piece, the locked piece, the moment an arch became immortal. When the centering came down and the arch stood alone, that was the moment every mason lived for.
Dawn on the site was a moment of quiet miracle, and a few more feet of palace had appeared overnight.
While the outer walls rose in stone, inside, another transformation was already underway. Even in the mud of construction, gold arrived, a reminder of the palace's ultimate purpose. The roller was older than civilization itself. It moved the stones of empire. The rope was the margin between order and catastrophe, and every worker on site knew it. The facade was finding its rhythm. Window after window, cornice after cornice. Every arch was geometry made physical. Each voussoir cut to an exact angle, each one useless without all the others. By night, the braziers cast the palace in fire, and the work continued. Molten lead, poured in seconds, set in minutes, bonding stones for centuries. From above, the palace's ambition was undeniable. Sornklint, a geometric statement of power, order, was the frieze told a story in stone, a narrative of empire, glory, and enduring power. Stone had found its place. Now timber and glass would fill the gaps, bringing light into the palace for the first time. Window by window, the palace opened its eyes to London, afoot, each one a precisely fitted frame of oak and glass. Iron railings, the palace's final boundary, drawn between the world of a monarch and the world beyond. Iron, shaped in fire, the blacksmith's craft as ancient as civilization, serving the newest palace of the modern age. Inside, the grandeur was already written in the architecture, in the sweep of every wall. The cornice was the palace's signature, each classical profile a word in the visual language of power and refinement. Even before the floors were laid, the ceilings were being adorned, the thiching, the palace decorating itself from the top down. Gold leaf, thinner than thought, transformed plaster into splendor with the gentlest touch of a brush. The portico was the palace's public face, the columns of power that would greet kings. Each flute was cut by hand, hundreds of them, on dozens of columns. The capital crowned the column, the finishing flourish of 1,000 hours of carving, lowered into place by rope and prayer. They left the site as they had arrived, quietly, anonymously, leaving behind another day's worth of permanence. The pediment was assembled on the ground first, every stone fitted and checked before any... In the pediment, history was carved in stone, allegories of empire watched over by the palace they adorned. The lift of the pediment was the most dangerous operation of the entire build. When the ropes went slack, history took over. The pediment had found its home, where it would stand for centuries. London's reign was relentless present, but the palace rose regardless, stone by patient stone, in every weather.
The central axis was the palace's invisible backbone, aligned, invisible, unmovable, and absolutely perfect.
When the scaffolding fell away, what remained was not stone. It was architecture. It was power. It was permanence. The stone was cleaned. And for the first time, the palace showed its true face to the world. The courtyard floor came last, the final surface on which kings and queens would walk for generations to come. And the urns, the finials, the carved ornament, the last vocabulary of a building, completing its sentence in stone. The gates of Buckingham Palace, the boundary between the world and the crown, were hung at last. The royal cipher, gilded in gold, fixed in iron, announced to the world whose palace this was. From the rooftop, the scale of the achievement was finally, fully visible. The last stone, set without ceremony, without fanfare, as every stone had been, one at a time. The scaffolding came down for the last time, and London finally saw what its builders had always known was there. Gold, plaster, stone, the interior of the palace spoke a language of absolute splendor.
In the last light of the day, Buckingham Palace stood complete SO. Silent, matte.
The doors opened, and the palace became what it was always meant to be. The grand staircase was Nash's masterpiece, a composition of light, stone, and gold.
At dawn, alone and still, the palace was most itself the realm, a monument to human will.
Through the gates, the palace watches London, and London watches back.
London came to see its new palace and found something.
The builders would be forgotten. The palace would not. A city arranged itself around a palace, and the palace stood at its heart, as it always had. By night, the palace transformed, stone became warmth, walls became windows, architecture became home. What Nash had drawn in ink, 1,000 hands had built in stone. The dream and the reality, perfectly aligned. Buckingham Palace, built by the hands of thousands, belonging to a nation, standing as testament to the greatest of human endeavors.